A holly jolly holiday. The Crusher's giant body hurtled toward me. "Arrgh!" he growled, his muscles bulged, his face gleamed with sweat, his gigantic hands, each bigger than my head, formed into his famous bone-crushing monster grip. "Beth," my older sister Jody called from the front hall, "where are you?" I reluctantly looked away from the wrestling match on TV. The Crusher had just locked his opponent, Gorgon, in the monster grip. The smaller wrestler struggled to get away. "I'm in here," I called. Jody appeared in the doorway of the den. She was still wearing her coat. My dog Ivory looked up from his spot in front of the fire. Then he lowered his head and went back to sleep. "Guess what I found?" Jody said excitedly. She held up a shopping bag with Christmas bows all over it. I shrugged. Jody and I might only be a year apart in age, but we are decades apart when it comes to our personalities. Why would I care what she bought at the mall? Still, I decided I should try to look interested. After all, Christmas was next week, and maybe Jody was giving me a sneak preview of my present. Jody opened the bag and pulled out a videotape. "Check it out," she said. I groaned when I recognized the picture on the box. Oh no, not Holly Jolly Holiday. It is Jody's favourite Christmas movie. It is also my least favourite. It is a silly, sappy story about the spirit of Christmas, and I hate everything about it. I especially hate its heroine. Suzie Snowflake is nicer than Santa and more cheerful than the Easter Bunny. Truly sickening. "Isn't it enough that it's on TV 16 times a day?" I asked. "You can't possibly want to watch it any more than that." Jody hugged the tape to her chest. "I could watch it 100 times a day and never get tired of it," she said. "I'm just lucky I found it. The lady at the Christmas shop said it was the only copy she's ever seen." Jody stepped forward to pop the tape into the VCR. "Can't you watch it later?" I cried. "Wrestle-O-Rama is on." Jody glanced at the TV. The Crusher was getting ready to jump off the ropes onto Gordon's head. My sister wrinkled her nose. She doesn't like wrestling. "Sorry," she said sweetly. Mum said it's my turn. I knew better than to argue. My mum had told me to turn off the TV an hour ago. "You can stay and watch the movie with me if you want, Beth," Jody offered. "I'd rather eat a reindeer," I muttered. But I had nothing better to do, so I stayed. The tape started. Suzie Snowflake danced out of the kitchen, tossing her shoulder-length red hair. "Christmas cookies to tempt your tummy," she said cheerfully. "What are the magic words?" Her children squealed with delight. "Pretty bitty please with Christmas trees," they cried. I groaned. I had almost forgotten how horrible this movie is. I watched as Suzie Snowflake spread holiday cheer throughout her neighborhood. She danced, she sang, she baked dozens of cookies. Then Suzie visited a grumpy neighbor. She wanted to bring him the holiday spirit. She sang a geeky song about Christmas chuckles and Santa smiles. Then she moved in for the kill. Her smile grew brighter. She tossed her red hair. She spread her arms. "Who could resist a holiday hug?" she chirped. "I can," I said, jumping up. "Shh!" Jody shushed me. Her eyes were glued to the screen. I went upstairs to my room and pulled out the December issue of Wrestle-O-Rama magazine. The Crusher was on the cover, standing over a cowering opponent. Jody had given me a subscription last Christmas. I hope she is planning to renew it this year, I thought. I settled back to read. This issue was packed with interesting articles. It took me a long time to read them all. By the time I finished, I noticed that a delicious smell was floating upstairs. So I decided to investigate. It smelled as if Dad had started his holiday baking. I tossed the magazine aside and ran downstairs. "Dad," I called, rushing into the kitchen. Nobody was there, but several batches of Christmas cookies were cooling on the counter. I grabbed a star-shaped cookie, still warm. "Dad," I called with my mouth full. I headed for the den. "Yo, Dad, where are you?" My mother and Jody glanced up from the TV. "Shh," they said. They were watching Holly Jolly Holiday. I rolled my eyes. I had been reading for at least a couple of hours. That meant they must have started the tape over again. Couldn't believe anyone would want to watch that movie even once, let alone twice in a row. "Where's Dad?" I asked. I wanted to tell him that his cookies are awesome. He's out in the garage, my mum replied, but he didn't bake the cookies. I did. You made them, I said, and I laughed. My mother doesn't bake. She never goes near the kitchen if she can help it. The only thing she ever makes is toast, and she even burns that half the time. You're kidding, right? I said. My mother smiled. I know I don't usually like to bake, but I was watching this lovely movie with your sister, and I suddenly had the urge to make some Christmas cookies to tempt your tummy. I couldn't believe what my mother was saying. What was even weirder was the sound of her voice. Then I suddenly realized who she sounded like. She sounded like Suzie Snowflake. I glanced at the screen where Suzie was tap dancing with Santa. Very funny, Mum, I said. This was obviously some kind of joke. Jody had probably put Mum up to it because she knew I hated Holly Jolly Holiday, but before I could say anything else, I noticed something that made my jaw drop. My mother's blonde hair had turned light red. What did you do to your hair? I asked. Then I glanced at Jody. Her waist-length hair was even redder than our mother's. Ivory looked up from his spot by the roaring fire. He let out a little bark. I looked at my dog and frowned. His white fur had a pinkish tinge. What's going on here? I asked. What do you mean, dearie? My mother asked. Huh? Mum never calls me dearie. Suzie Snowflake calls people dearie. This isn't funny anymore, I said. Mum didn't reply. Instead, she and Jody started singing along to the tape. Where Santa's dancing children play, it's a holly jolly holiday. I couldn't take it anymore. I hurried out of the room. My mother and my sister were acting really weird. They probably thought it was funny, but I didn't. Not at all. I paused outside the den. I had just caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My dark blonde hair had a slight reddish tint. I stared at myself. My heart started pounding as I tried to think of an explanation. Was there a chemical leak in the house that was affecting everybody's hair colour? Was something wrong with my eyes? I had to figure out what was going on. I found my father in his garage workshop. He was working on Jody's Christmas gift, a fancy jewellery box. Hi, BB, he said. That was his nickname for me. Hey, Dad, check out my hair, I said. Notice anything? He took a close look. It looks red, he said. Did you colour it? No. I told him the whole story. At first I thought Jody and Mum were playing a joke on me, I finished. But now I think it's more serious than that. A joke, huh? Dad said, frowning. It sounds as if you're playing a joke on your old dad. He stroked his thick black beard. Okay, what's the punchline? I'm serious, I insisted. Go inside and look for yourself. The hair is redder than mine. My father sighed and set down his tools. Fine, he said. I can tell you aren't going to give me any peace until I go look. I perched on a stool and waited for him to return. I was still scared, but I felt better now that Dad was on the case. I knew he didn't believe me, but he would. I waited for 10 minutes, then 15. It was chilly in the workshop. What is keeping him? Finally, I gave up and went inside. Dad, I called. In here, dearie, he called back from the den. Dearie. I thought in dismay. Oh no, I went into the den. The first thing that I saw was the TV, the last scene of Holly Jolly Holiday. My mother and sister were sitting on the couch. I gasped when I saw them. My mother's hair was shoulder length and shiny red. The ends flipped up just like Suzie Snowflake's. Jody's hair looked exactly the same. I turned to my father for help, but I almost screamed when I saw him. His normally black hair was now almost as red as Mum's, and his beard and mustache were gone. Dad, did you shave? I asked. I didn't expect an answer. I glanced at Ivory and saw that his fur was almost the same shade of red as Mum's and Jody's hair. Somehow my whole family was turning into Suzie Snowflake. Don't fret, dearie, my dad said with a smile. He pointed to a platter on the coffee table. Have some Christmas cookies to tempt your tummy. I almost reached for one when I realized what I was doing. I jerked my hand back. This was no time for a snack. Oh, dearie me, I cried. I gasped as I realized what I had just said. That scared me more than all the rest put together. I was changing too. I glanced into the mirror over the fireplace. Sure enough, my hair was redder now than ever before. It was almost an inch or two longer than its usual chin length. The ends were starting to flip up. It was the movie. It had to be. That stupid Suzie Snowflake movie was changing all of us. Maybe it isn't too late, I thought. The movie was ending. Jody got up and went to the VCR. Out of my way, dearie, I said. Jody, I need that videotape. Jody paused with her finger on the rewind button. Is something wrong, dearie? Stop calling me that, I snapped. Something is wrong, really wrong, and it has to do with that tape. Give it to me. Jody ejected the tape, but instead of handing it over, she stuck it behind her back. What are the magic words? She asked in a lilting Suzie Snowflake voice. I gritted my teeth. Please, I said. My sister shook her head. My parents smiled. That's not it, Jody sang out. She giggled and waggled one finger. You have to know the right magic words, dearie, otherwise you'll just have to wait until Santa's at the gate. That was another line from Holly Jolly Holiday. Shut up, I cried. Don't you see what's happening? Anybody who watches that videotape starts turning into Suzie Snowflake. We have to destroy it before it's too late. My family stared at me blankly. Even Ivory gave me a blank look. What are the magic words? Jody repeated cheerfully. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. What was that sappy line from the movie? If I could remember, Jody might actually hand over the tape. Pretty pleased with the cherry on top? I asked. Jody shook her head. Pretty pleased with a holiday hug? I tried. Jody shook her head again. I had been forced to watch that stupid movie often enough. Why couldn't I remember the line? Oh, sugar cookies, I said. It wasn't what I meant to say at all. There was only one thing to do. It was risky, but I had no choice. Suzie Snowflake knew the magic words. If I let myself fall deeper under the spell, I could remember the words, and then I could get the tape. I only hoped I could pull myself back out in time. Otherwise, I'd end up being Suzie Snowflake lookalike forever. I tried to relax. I hummed a few bars of the movie theme song. I grabbed a cookie and nibbled on it. Before long, I could feel the corners of my mouth turning up in a big, bright smile. I bent down to pat Ivory's furry red head. I started to sing, Where Santa's Dancing Bright Red Pants. Visions of sugar plums danced through my head. I had a sudden urge to bake some cookies too. Maybe I was making too much of all this. What is wrong with a little bit of holly jolly holiday spirit? After all, words drifted through my head, happy words, Christmas words. One sentence in particular for some reason seemed important, but I couldn't remember why. I turned to Jody. Her pretty red hair was flipped up at the ends and she was smiling. I smiled back and I said the words that were still dancing through my head. Pretty bitty please with Christmas trees. That's it! Jody shoved the videotape into my hands. I stared at it. Holly Jolly Holiday. What a lovely movie. It would be the perfect thing to watch right now. And I loved Suzie Snowflake. She was everything I ever wanted to be. I took a step toward the VCR. Something was playing quietly on the TV. I squinted at it. Dearie me, what are those large men doing? Why were they trying to hurt each other? One of the men looked very familiar. The Crusher, I murmured. My real thoughts suddenly came flooding back. They were all tangled and confused with Suzie Snowflake's cheerful Christmas thoughts, but I knew what I had to do. Ugh, I shouted just like the Crusher. I turned and threw the videotape into the roaring fire. My family screamed as the tape went up in flames. Ivory barked wildly as the tape burned. All my urges to talk and act and think like Suzie Snowflake melted away. Ivory whined and shoved his cold nose into my hand. When I looked down at him, I saw that his red fur was already fading back to white. The whole family gathered in the den on Christmas Eve. Everything seemed normal. Everyone's hair was its usual colour. My father's beard was as thick as ever. Mum hadn't been near the kitchen in days, and Jody was the only one humming the Holly Jolly Holiday theme, which actually was normal. We hadn't talked about what had happened the week before. Open this one next, Jody urged. She handed me a gift wrapped in red and green paper. I know you're going to love it. I ripped open the package eagerly, and I gasped when I saw what was inside. Oh wow, I cried. Thanks, Jody. It was a tape starring the Crusher. I popped it into the VCR. Wrestle-O-Rama presents the Crusher in some of his greatest matches, an announcer said. Then the Crusher appeared on the screen. looking as mean and dangerous as always. Ugh! He screamed with rage. I grinned with excitement. This was the best Christmas present ever. Where did you find it? I asked Jody. I didn't know the Crusher had his own video. I know, Jody replied. The lady at the Christmas shop said it was the only copy she's ever seen. Hi, I am so glad you made it to the end of the story. Congratulations! If you would like to hear about any new stories or any new videos from the Leftovers channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell icon just so we can keep bugging you. We have a distinctly 90s flavour here. We look at video games, toys, books, Lego sets, and we do have a lot of fun, so I'd love for you guys to come back. So stay tuned for some more leftover culture. Thank you for watching.